Future-proof knowledge podcast. Mind unlocked. With every episode we cast. Real talk, real tools. Wisdom on the fly. Tune in, geek out, reach for the sky. FPK, Future-proof knowledge podcast.
The Future-proof Knowledge Podcast, episode 11. We are alive. Today it is just myself, and there's a gentleman sitting on the opposite side of the world, chilling out, taking it easy, not stressed at all ever. He definitely wasn't stressed 10 minutes before our conversation started today, and then the stress got lifted off him 5 minutes ago, which makes me much happier. Jashon, how are you doing today?
Oh, doing fabulous. Nice to let a little bit of stress off my shoulders and get ready to jump into this podcast and see what type of interesting information we can share with all of our fabulous listeners today.
Yeah, it should be a good one. So today we are going to look at really how it can be challenging for, say, adult learners going back to education. And we'll cover the whole kind of gamut of different types of learners. But I suppose we've traditionally, so far in this podcast, had a focus on kind of young people, how to support those young people. But there's a massive cohort of adults out there who maybe didn't finish their schooling, who maybe left early, got into a job, would love to go back and maybe get a degree, maybe get even, in Ireland, their leaving certificate, which they haven't had, but they've got their challenges. And as human beings, the older we get, the more our belief systems become entrenched within us. And we can talk a little bit about that as well. That can make us question ourselves and our ability to learn, and therefore create an invisible wall when it comes to us looking to go back into education. But I suppose when we look at belief systems, Jashon, right? So most of us will take on beliefs about ourselves between the ages of 3.5 and 7 years of age. It's when we're kind of coming out into the world and starting to realize we're not the center of the universe. I've probably discussed this many times. So at that time, because we're only small, we don't know if we can keep ourselves alive. And what we got to do is find ways to get people to look after us. So we'll take on beliefs, and those beliefs will have really positive elements. So if I've got like a belief that, be a nice person, that's a really good belief to have. But the problem can come is where I'm really nice to everybody else, but I'm not very nice to myself, where I'll put everybody else ahead of myself and not look after my own needs, which can be not good in the long term and the older we get. Or if I've got someone who's got a really high level of success, and I want to, if I get at that age, a belief that if I do things really, really, really well, if I'm like nearly perfect, then people will take care of me. And then the people around me kind of encourage that by giving us positive feedback. Like, it's not that it's negative. That's really positive because I'm going to work really, really hard throughout my life. The problem comes, though, is when I feel like I'm never doing a good enough job. So there's all these different things that can be getting in the way of us as adults. While they'll have positive elements, they can have very challenging elements, and especially when we're talking about going back into education. But if you're happy, Jashon, maybe you'll share with us your experience of education, and as an adult, how maybe you view yourself and your ability to learn different to what you did when you were in school.
Uh, I dropped out of high school. Well, I technically didn't drop out, so I joined the Army, and I kind of snuck out of high school. The recruiter called me after I signed up, and they said they had a class ready for basic training. If I wanted to go, be ready and show up on this day at this time. It just happened to be 6 months before the end of my 12th, or 6 months between the end of my 11th grade year, that I got that call. So I went ahead and I jumped on the bus and I went, and I never came back to school, and that was that. Then as I got older, I moved around a bit. I was living in Florida for a bit of time, and I was working jobs. I've always been a tradesman. I've worked good with my hands, and that's the stuff I learned as a young man from other male figures in my life who taught me different skills. So I was very good at that, and that's what I did. But I hit a point to where it was like there were certain jobs I wanted outside of the trade. I wanted to do something that was using my head. Even though I dropped out of school and I wasn't the best student, I I knew I was a smart person, and I knew I was very smart at certain things. And there's certain things I'm just really good at. And I wanted to get into work where I use my brain. Where I was having problems though is being a high school dropout without a diploma, without a GED, your general education degree. Um, when you're looking for a better job, that's a hindrance. It kind of holds you back. So I procrastinated. I never went and I had never applied for those jobs that I wanted because I was like, oh, I might have to go back to school and do this, and that's such a headache. And you think back to how you were in school, and for me, it was like, oh, that's not something I want to go back and relive. But eventually, you hit a wall, and you're like, oh, well, something's got to give. So I went ahead and I signed up to go get my general education degree, my GED. And when taking the practice test, I realized that, as an adult, spent a lot of time since I had dropped out of school, and you don't realize how much stuff you learn just living. Life is education. There's so much you learn on a day in, day out. You don't even realize stuff you're learning. Having a conversation with a friend at a bar might roll into a topic that you actually learned something from and you didn't plan on it and you didn't even think it was an education moment, but you'll find yourself regurgitating that knowledge you got from a conversation in a bar to somebody else 2 or 3 months down the line because it's something you learned in the most abstract way. So when I went in, I took that practice test. I was quite surprised. My common sense knowledge and the information that I just learned by living was enough to allow me to ace the practice test. So I decided I'm just gonna go ahead and take the final test. I took the final test, aced it, piece of cake. I was like, what was I worried about for all these years? The boost of confidence that that gave me of just passing that simple test um, was huge. And that gave me a little bit of kind of lit the fire of I want to learn more now. If I was able to do that, that I've been scared of for so long, and I aced it, what else am I capable of? So I went ahead and I went and got the job I wanted, but I wanted to be better. With that newfound confidence of passing that general education course, I went and I applied to ITT Technical Institute. It was a school to teach you how to about electronics, from the simplest basics of resistors to building full-on electronic components and things of that nature. So I took a stab at it. I said, I'm going to do it. I'm confident. I'm pretty smart, and I did great. It was amazing. And then that just started uh, love of self-learning as an adult self-learning and teaching myself. I wanted to be a lifelong learner at that point. And from that point on, any opportunity I had to learn or to pick up something and learn something, I jumped on it. So for me, I find even today, learning in micro doses works best for me. If you flood me with a bunch of information, I'm only going to retain a micro bit of it. So if you give me a micro course, I'm going to retain 100% of that course and I'm going to move on. And my confidence is strong and I'm going to be motivated when I jump into that next micro course. So that's been my experience with education from a adolescent to an adult. And I find that being a student as an adult is so much more rewarding than being a student as a youth
Mm.
because you can study whatever you want, you can learn whatever you want. You don't have your prerequisites that you have to learn. You're at a stage where you learn what you enjoy, you learn what you want to enjoy, And for me, that's super exciting. And that makes learning fun and engaging and keeps me coming back for more.
And you mentioned a number of times there the word confidence. And I think the reverse of that is something that a lot of people experience, is that going through the system as it is currently for a lot of people can absolutely destroy your confidence in your ability to learn, and or your perception of your ability to learn. And if we look at human beings in general, like none of us want to look stupid. None of us want to, have everyone point and stare at us and go, there's the fella, the only guy in the class who hasn't got a clue what's going on. He's the Dumbo. Let's put him in the corner with the dunce's hat on. Like, but that doesn't even happen anymore in that way. But yet, it's an inbuilt fear. And I think one of our jobs as adults, and I'm going to dip back into children at the moment, is to help them build their confidence in their ability to learn. And it's something we talk about all the time. But I love that idea of micro courses and how we could maybe implement that throughout the existing education system, where, from, okay, we have to have a basic foundation, but there's nothing to say that a 6-year-old couldn't get a micro qualification in maths, if it's delivered in a way that they can go, oh, great. They can get the success rate of doing well, and then they're more confident in their ability to go on to the next level. Plus, they may have more of a motivation because, like, well, look, here's one. Let's get the other one. Let's get it's like leveling up in games that they love so much. So I'd love to see that implemented in a much more effective way, as opposed to, say, in Ireland, where it's all based around one set of state exams, or I suppose two essentially, with the junior certificate and the leaving certificate. Like, that's just your ability to retain information on one particular day at one particular moment that does not take into account what's happening in your life, where you are, how you've been getting on, and how you learn and how you can regurgitate that information. And like you, I never really enjoyed school. No, that's not true. I enjoyed elements of school when I was younger, especially when I was like preteen. Like I'd love doing nature class, because we'd be going out and we'd be in nature and we'd be picking up leaves and stuff like that. And I loved, like, it's funny when I think back, like as a really young child, I was really good at spelling. And then that changed somewhere along the way, and I don't know why it changed. But I loved spelling, like when I was very small. Um, and even doing like simple maths I loved, and then it kind of changed as well, art, that kind of thing. But when, as I got older, so I got my leaving cert. I didn't do as well as I would have hoped. I did as well as my application probably warranted, is what I'd say. Then I went and got a degree, and again, the degree for me was a lot more interesting because there was a lot more autonomy. So while we had specific modules, ultimately I could write whatever I had to write, based around something I was interested in and related back to that. So that was a bit more of a, okay, I've got a bit more freedom here and I can do what I need to do. But I still never really enjoyed sitting down reading academic books. Like, I'd be reading them while I was playing on my PlayStation or listening to my records, and not taking too much information in. But I got through, and then I went to do my psychotherapy masters, and I was working full time at the time. I was studying in the UK, so I was flying over every month. And after 2 years, I was in a job I was getting bullied by my boss. I was not in a good place mentally. I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is just way too much. So I went, right, I'm going to finish up. But I got a qualification each year I'd completed, which was fantastic. It's exactly what you're saying, the micro qualifications. So it wasn't like I had to complete the full, okay, if I'd completed the full 4 years, I'd have got my master's degree, but I still got qualifications from completing the first 2 years. But that kind of put me off a little bit because of the pressure I felt. And I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy that pressure. But like I was saying last week, now I read not academic books, but I read theoretical books for fun now. But again, if you were to put me having to do it in a time frame, no way am I going to do it. But over the years, I've worked with many, many young people who became adults who had dropped out of school early. And the amount of them who would come back to me at like 21, 22 going, I wish I hadn't have dropped out. I wish I had just stayed and fought through. But they couldn't. The system just didn't work with how they learn best. So they actually just had no choice but to leave because they were, well, some of them didn't have a choice. They were just expelled from school for being troublemakers. But then the opportunities, because of the structure of society, the opportunities open to them were not, they were restricted because they didn't have the qualifications. So, and I've seen kids, well, not kids, actually, young adults go and try and further themselves, but because they don't have those basic foundations in maybe reading or writing, one, their confidence is not there in their ability, but two, the structures of adult learning, there's very little hand holding. So if you struggle, it's kind of like, that's your problem. You got to deal with it. And a lot of them drop out of that, which then compounds the original challenges they had in the first place. I'd like to ask you about what you think AI can do to counteract some of those challenges, because like we are entering a space that we've never had before, or the abilities that we've never had before. Do you think AI will help encourage people to go back and get qualifications, or might it have the opposite impact and make them go, I don't need to go and get the qualification. I can just go and do the job myself?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think it probably deserves a better answer than what I'll give. But we'll go ahead and give it a shot. So I think with AI now, I think it could go one of two ways. Yeah, I think it could discourage some older learners from really seeking out that additional education and maybe getting a certificate in a certain field that they're interested in, because it is so easy to get that information and ask an AI the answers and be like, have a false sense of knowing it and going in and doing it yourself. That is a real concern. But I think it's going to pull more in the other direction where I think AI is going to encourage more people to learn. Myself, I used to drive around and I drive just when I'm bored. I like to get in my car and just cruise around. And I would cruise around, I'd listen to music all day. I might drive around for 4 or 5 hours a day listening to music the whole time. That's the way I used to roll. Now with AI, and because I do know there's a wealth of information, all of us, every single day, I'm sure within the last hour, you've had a dozen thoughts of, I wonder about this, or I wonder if this is possible. Everyone has those thoughts. You probably have them 10 to 15 times per minute. Simple thought of, I wonder this, or if I knew this. Well, now when I drive around, I no longer listen to music. I let my thoughts just bleed out everywhere. So as soon as a thought comes in my head, I wonder how this would be. I pull out my I put it on streaming mode so it'll answer back to me, and I'll say, hey, I'm driving right now, but I was wondering, I was thinking about this topic. What can you tell me about it? So now my whole 4 hours of driving around that used to be listening to music is now conversating with an autonomous being that's answering my every question, my every thought, my every wonder. I wonder what would happen if this. I wonder if this particular item fell off the shelf and hit the floor this way, what could potentially happen? I mean, the most random questions is what I'm asking my AI, and it's giving me answers. And what I'm finding is through the answers it's giving me, there's a lot of education. I'm retaining a lot of this information because it's stuff I'm interested in. It's stuff where typically you would hold on to that thought until you got home. Let's go back 15, no, let's go back 20 years ago. If you had one of those thoughts, you'd wait till you get home and you'd pull out the encyclopedias and start flipping through pages. But there's 100 thoughts that you let go because you can only focus on one and flip through pages for one by the time you got to your encyclopedia. So all those other quick thoughts that came in your head are gone now, but there's one that you've had time to look up. Well, now you have access to all of that on the go. So education is so easy. And I think by it being that easy, it's going to inherently build your confidence because you can be on your way to a meeting that you have with somebody, and you can practice that meeting conversation to build your conversation up so that when you get to the meeting, you've already played it out and it's there. So I think with AI, I think it's going to encourage more people to pick up education. I think it's going to help them fine tune exactly what it is they want to learn. So I believe AI will give opportunities to adults that felt a little less confident of going back to school, the confidence that they can do it, that they can go back to school. And the way they'll do it is by learning in micro lessons, building their confidence, and then diving in and ready for the full curriculum from something that they're interested in. But what are you interested in? You got to dabble around to find out. And with the age of AI, it lets you experiment with all these different things.
Yeah. And I think that is, it's that experimentation opportunity that's available that, like, people will talk about how AI is dumbing people, but
I don't believe it for a second.
yeah.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't.
it depends on the way you use it. Yeah, AI for those who want to be dumbed down and just want to ask fart jokes and stuff like that to AI. Yeah, that's what 90% of people are using it for. But inherently, they're still learning by interacting, regardless whether they realize it or not.
And like the same could be applied for anything. Like using social media. Is that dumbing you? Is driving around in your car listening to music for 4 hours? Is that dumbing you? Is going into a job that you hate dumbing you? It, like, it's just so easy to point the finger at something being negative and not looking at the potential opportunities that are there. I remember my wife used to do adult literacy. She used to volunteer in the adult literacy center, where it was working with adults to try and help them learn to read and spell and stuff like that. And like opportunities like that, I thought it took a significant level of bravery from the individuals to step up and essentially put their hand up and go, I really struggle. Like, that is such a brave thing for an adult to do, I think, especially nowadays when people are very quickly to judge, people, can stigmatize, and adults will find their way around things. Kids do the same, actually. But we will, like, find ways to not have our, I won't say weaknesses, but whatever the other word is for weakness, the things that we're not confident about ourselves, we'll find ways to just not have them exposed. So we become very clever, but it's that voice inside, that gremlin inside that knows us and knows our deepest, darkest secrets. That's the one that starts to criticize us and make us feel like I can't do it. But then the gremlin is such a prick. What he does is, don't, you can't learn. And then it'll jump to the other shoulder and go, I can't believe you're not even trying to learn. Look at the stadia. You're a disgrace. And then jump back over and go, yeah, but don't try and learn because you can't, because you're dumb. Oh my God. I can't believe you're not even trying. You are so dumb for not even trying. And it just, we start to beat the living shit out of ourselves over something that, if we just started the process, could actually amount to not becoming a brain surgeon, not becoming a multi-millionaire, but maybe just feeling more okay within our own skin. And that's way more important than any euro or dollar or pound that you're ever going to earn. Like when you left school, like, did you feel like you were less than the other students? Or when you were in school, did you feel like you were less than the other students from a learning perspective or intelligence perspective?
From a from a intellect wise, I always felt that my other classmates were always smarter. And when I left school, I was like, this school will be better off without me because they can use their resources rather than trying to hold my hand through everything. They can use their resources better for the students that can actually retain the information. On the flip side of that coin, because I'm also a very arrogant person, I always knew that I was maybe not book smart, as book smart as the rest of my peers, but I knew I'd be more successful than the rest of my peers, no matter how book smart they were. I've always been a believer in common sense and the will to fight versus education and book smarts. You know, somebody can educate themselves till the cows come home. They can know every subject, every topic. Great example. I have an Aunt Martha, Martha Harris. Uh, she was born in the times where, as a little girl, she was in the cotton fields with her parents picking cotton. Um, she dropped out of elementary school in the fifth grade because they needed more help in the cotton fields than they needed her to have education. But she would still study at night when she came home from the cotton fields. Then she went to high school, still working in the cotton fields and working as a housekeeper. She finally graduated high school at the age of 24 years old because she was only able to take certain classes, and it took her a long time. And then she went into TSU, Texas State University, and she started there, just taking the basic classes. This lady is an academic. She took every single course in a matter of 45 years that they had to offer at Texas State University. I mean, every course, every elective,
Wow.
every class she took until the dean of the school came to her and said, look, there's nothing left for you to study at this school. The subjects that you've excelled at, that you seem to be doing your research and stuff in now, is forensic science. We'd like you to head the forensic science department. So she was a lifelong learner. She just stayed with it. And that was inspiring to me. Um, but when I look at the way the way she did things, she was an academic and she could do everything, and she stayed in academics. But if you take her out of academics, there wasn't much she can navigate. That was her world. There's a lot of people out there who aren't book smarts, who can't do that route she did. They're just common sense, or they're just go-getters, and they're going to figure out, if there's a will, there's a way. That was me, and that's the majority of people out there. Um, from my beliefs, I believe the majority of people out there aren't intellect. They're just go-getters, and they're going to do what it takes to make things happen. For those people, AI is a game changer. If you look at learning platforms over the last 10 years and their development, primarily it's been youth going on to use online learning. When they struggle, they turn and they go to their parents. I need help with this. The parents help them. Now you take an adult, you put them on that platform. They run into struggles. 10 years ago, they didn't have someone to turn to and say, hey, I'm having struggles with this. They're an adult. They're left on their own to figure it out. Now, if you look at learning platforms today and the introduction of AI, now now adults have that parent they can turn to and ask for help. You're on the learning platform, you're running into a struggle, you can turn to AI and be like, hey, now I have a partner in this. I have somebody who can help guide me and take me the next step. So I think AI is an integral part of education for adults. I think any adult that's trying education without AI is only hurting themselves. They need that support.
Yeah, and I think like this brings up another interesting point for me, because like if we look at traditional digital literacy, and generally it's young people who have no fear about engaging with digital products, or um, having playing around it. But in my experience, it is those some of those people, those adults who whose confidence is low in their ability to learn. It's almost like, well, I can't learn this technology thing, so what, like, because I couldn't learn books, there's no way I can learn technology. And I do think there's a space for showing adults who maybe want to return to education how to utilize those um, AI technologies that are available in a way that the fear is taken away from it. They're not going to explode their phone or the computer if they ask ChatGPT a question, right? Show them that foundation of, look, this can be your support to learn. This can be your, AI study coach, um, that will help you, so that you don't need to feel exposed, or it'll help you get a foundation to then be able to go on and build up your skill base, so that you feel confident enough to go back to education and get whatever level of certification you would like to get. And I think if we can start to encourage that and utilize that, then what that can do is help those people to bridge that gap. And I think that's where the AI has the potential to do that. Um, so now, I've never done it, but I'm pretty sure I could go on and say, uh, teach me how to learn about cooking through my interest in butterflies. I'm sure I'm going to get some sort of prompt that's going to help me. And I already have that interest graph kicking up, because I like butterflies and I want to learn how to cook in relation to butterflies. Listeners, maybe one of you'll jump in there and try and figure out how you can learn how to cook through butterflies. But I do think we can demystify. I think that's the thing. Technology and digital literacy, utilizing AI now better than we ever could before.
Oh, absolutely. And I think back to when I took my GED, and I wonder if other adults feel this way too. So I showed up to the GED testing site. I walk in. At the time, I think I'm 24, 25 years old. I think I was, yeah, somewhere around there, mid 20s. Now looking around the room, and it's a bunch of 17-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids. And that's intimidating. You come in, you're an adult, and you're sitting in the class, and there's all these young kids in there, and you're like, wow, look at me. I'm that dunce in the corner, and all these kids are smarter than me. I wonder how many adults feel that when they go back to school. I'm sure it's a little different on a university campus, because you get students of all ages, you get lifelong learners coming back to further their PhDs and things of that nature. But just I mainly looking at like the community college, where an adult would go to extend their education. Um, I bet there's a lot of feelings of embarrassment of being the old guy in the room or the old woman in the room with all these younger people. Um, how do how can AI help with that feeling? Is there a place for AI? Or how can adults reassess and re-engage that thought process to where they're not feeling that intimidation when
Yeah,
going
well,
back?
what I'd say is, in my experience here, certainly in Ireland, there are a lot more of those micro courses run through a community college here in Drogheda. So they'll offer courses in criminology, they'll offer courses in beauty technology, they'll offer courses in psychology that are short 12-week 1 year courses that will, and some of the schools will do the same. They'll offer those kind of, because I've taught at a few of them before. uh, Here I am teaching, like, what's that all about? But like, those things I think are really, really good to dabble in. But I do think, if there was a, you know, sometimes that's not the issue. The issue is not the interest. The issue is the belief that I can't learn, I can't spell, I can't read. And I think this is where assistive technology that is AI empowered absolutely is going to be a game changer. But it is already. Like, how many times have you and I been sitting on a call together working through stuff for FPK, and we're both talking into our AIs to ask them to help us with something? So it's there. It's just, yeah, I suppose the challenge is breaking down those barriers that people might have around using them, and just having the confidence to play.
And I think part of it is just the conversations like we're having here. And I think another big thing is adults who have had learning fears are intimidated by going back, um, need to help other adults by just speaking up about their fears. So, for instance, myself, I'm a high school dropout. I've never been an academic. I'm a very persistent person. If I see a problem and I'm focused on it, I'm going to figure it out. I may have to learn some stuff and I'll learn it to figure it out. But here I am. I'm a high school dropout. I'm not the most educated person. And I'm about to be 50 and I'm creating educational courses for other individuals to learn from. So the irony behind that, to have somebody who's not a intellect, who didn't enjoy school, who hated school, um, is now 100% focused in education, building educational content. Um, and I think the fascinating and fun part about it for me is knowing where I was in my younger years up till 19, 20 years old and before, um, and knowing where I am now, and actually enjoying the education that I'm absorbing by creating these educational courses. So I think more people like me who have had these struggles, who have found a way to enjoy re-engaging in education. I'm not saying everybody needs to go out there and start creating educational courses, but you may find yourself thinking of something that you struggled with that was in high school. Let's say there might have been a course that you struggled with and you just couldn't understand it. Maybe try to create a course that you would understand, even though you struggled with it. Try to create a course today that'll make you understand, and see how that might open up and reinvigorize your thirst for knowledge, because you may find, hey, this is fun. I was able to figure out a way to learn something that gave me challenges as a kid. I figured out a new way to format it. What else can I do now? There was another topic that I had trouble with. Let me go attack that and see if I can rearrange that to where I understand it. So sharing our stories of where we struggled and what it took to get us out of those struggles, and how we were able to re-energize our love for learning, I think is going to be an important part. AI is going to help, but I think the biggest thing is being open and honest about your own personal struggles and sharing that with the world. We're adults now. We shouldn't care if people laugh at us, think we're stupid, this and that. By exposing ourselves and our vulnerabilities, we're going to assist other adults and give them the confidence to know that they're not the only one, that if this idiot over here can do it, from a high school dropout to creating content for FPK University, then damn it, maybe I can do it too. And that's without any AI intervention.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember a few years ago, I had a coaching client come to me, and he came because his children were becoming teenagers. He had twins, and he was petrified. He said, I spend loads of time with my kids. I love spending time with my kids. He said, I was petrified that they will know, that they'll learn that I can't read. This man was a multi-millionaire, one of the most successful business people I have ever met in my life. And he couldn't read. And as we kind of talked through his process, he was like that. I dropped out of school to go and work. He said, I always wanted to just work. Like, I enjoyed work. I enjoyed being around people who were working. School was just like, you might as well have been sticking pins in my face. It was so excruciatingly painful. So I just dropped out. My parents, like, they got to the point where they were just sick of arguing with me. And my dad turned around to me and said, right, if you're dropping out, you are not sitting on your ass in the bed all day. So you go out and get a job. He's like, that's all I ever wanted to do. So we started working. I think he was 14 when he dropped out of school. Like, now this is going back, into the 80s. So it probably was a bit more accepted. But he dropped out and started laboring on a building site. And he said the education he got around those builders and, plasterers and roofers and everything like that, he said, and just learning about life was just so good. And he ended up becoming owning his own construction company that did really, really well. But he said all the money in the world couldn't make him feel confident about having to sit down with his children and do their homework when they moved into secondary school, because he couldn't read. And he said he couldn't go back to the adult literacy because everybody knows him. And he was so embarrassed. So we actually just worked on that belief system that he had. And he won't mind me sharing this conversation. He, like you just said there, he said, obviously don't give my name, but he said, like, you can talk about my story because it might help other people who drop out of school early. We broke down the belief system that what other people would think about him, and that his children would think less of them. And he moved into a space of owning it. So we sat down with his kids and he said to them, I'm not good at reading. And I'm really worried about when you move into secondary school that I won't be able to help you with your homework. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to adult education so that I can try and learn to read. And his kids turned around and said, but Dad, you don't have to help us. You just being there, talking to us, not reading anything, but talking to us can help, because that's all what you've done when we're doing homework all along anyway. And it sounded like he was a brilliant teacher in inverted commas, because his kids would say, Dad, like, what's 27 multiplied by 45? And he go, well, okay, well, let's find a way to try and work it out. So let's work together. Like, how do you think that might work for you? Brilliant. He wasn't giving them the answer, but he was talking them through how they might find it. And then he'd give them his perspective on how he learned or how he would work it out. And like, this man could like do figures like that in his head. You know what I mean? But once he owned it, kind of going back to what you were saying about we shouldn't care. what people think. But once he owned it, he actually did go back because he'd admitted it to his kids, which was like the biggest. Like after his kids kind of went, sure, we don't care. You know what I mean? Uh, all of a sudden, nobody else mattered. And he went back and he learned how to read. Now, he wasn't doing it to go back and get a degree or get a diploma or get a master's or a PhD. He was just doing it so he could sit and read with his kids. I don't know how much he ever did read with his kids because they were moving to being teenagers. So they might have been like, piss off, Dad. I don't even talk to you. Never mind, sit down and do my homework with you. But there's an example of both sides of that coin. Someone who could be really successful, but be so insecure about themselves and have their had their confidence knocked so much because that he couldn't read. But by changing the belief system, he was able to move beyond that and go, okay, well, if I own it, then nobody can pull the rug from under my feet. Nobody can expose me as somebody who can't read because I've exposed myself. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean.
Please don't expose yourself.
I don't encourage anybody goes and exposes themselves ever. But you know, once we remove that rug that people can pull from under us, potentially, all of a sudden, our fears can fall away quite quickly. And fears are only stories we tell ourselves in our head. Now, when I say that in terms of, I'm talking about things like education, obviously it's good to have a fear of jumping into shark infested waters. It's probably not a good idea, right? Especially if you can't swim, right? But, you know, those types of fears are usually things that aren't even real. Jashon, as we kind of move towards a bit of a close, like from your experience, from your time on this planet, from your engaging with other people and friends and family and stuff like that, like what kind of things would you say to any listeners out there now who are going, oh, okay, I'm listening to the lads and maybe I would like to go and get a degree, or maybe I do want to become Dr. Allen, you know, and I don't have anything. Like, what would you say to them in relation to the next steps or how they could go about actually moving towards that goal without putting too much pressure or setting expectations that are unrealistic for themselves?
I mean, I think we really just, especially your last topic there, I think that really covers the answer to that question. I don't think this is a matter of technology or education. I think this is going to be a matter of identifying what you believe is your weakness, accepting it, and sharing it with somebody, so that you own it. And then from that point, then yeah, technology will come into play. But if there's adults out there thinking about getting back into education, or they want to go back, they're just not sure how to go about it, they don't feel like they're smart enough. Um, with the advancements in AI, and with it being free, AI is free for everybody. Just if you guys don't know that, AI is absolutely 100% free for any of the listeners out there listening. All the platforms have a free version, so it's available. Using AI to help you decide would be a very good tool. So let's say you wanted to go back, but you weren't sure exactly what you wanted to do. Um, Experiment with AI. Say, hey, I'm interested in this field. I'm interested in this field. What are some of the ups and downs of a person entering this particular field? Um, and you can get that feedback, and you can see which ones have a barrier that you're okay with knocking down, or you can see which ones have barriers that you're just not interested in. And then that'll kind of fine tune your direction. Now, once you have a direction, use your AI to fine tune where you go in that direction. It might be um, you want to learn more about mathematics. You're just not good at algebra, but you feel like in your current job or your current career, algebra is going to play a significant role. So now you can go deeper into that. what aspects of algebra will relate to my current employment. So now you're fine tuning. So you're not going in and having to ingest a broad subject. You fine tune to that micro element of that subject that is pertinent to you individually. And that makes it easier to start your adventure back into education because now you're tackling one small bit of a larger picture. And you'll find once you tackle that small bit, it's going to inherently boost your confidence. And then you're going to go for the next bit and then the next bit. So use AI to fine tune what it is you want to learn. Use AI to fine tune from what you want to learn to what it's going to specifically relate to your interest and start at that point. So it builds your confidence and it's kind of like a pyramid. Before you know it, you're going to be at the base and you're going to have all this wealth of knowledge that started from one very small, fundamental, direct um, micro course that was designed for a very specific niche for something you're interested in and how it's going to help what you're interested in. And it can just blow up from there.
Yeah, I really like that approach because what it does is it makes it manageable. And I think sometimes what can happen is we can have a goal in mind of where we'd like to be and what we'd like to achieve. But sometimes that goal can feel like it's just a million miles away. So, like if it's a degree, it's a 4-year degree, it's like that's a massive commitment.
But it's only one day in class.
Well,
Forget about the rest of them.
that's exactly it. It's about just chunking it back down to going, right. It's important to have that North Star, that goal that you have overall. But all you think about is walking before you can run. That will happen if you start small right now and be consistent and back yourself and actually put the effort in that you need to do. And that goes across the board in terms of anything. Like if you and I want to lose weight, or if you and I want to get really muscular, we could sit here and go, that's never going to happen. I'm never going to lose that weight, or I'm never going to be really muscular, because you're looking at yourself and then you're going, that picture I have in my head is impossible. But that picture is just a North Star. What we got to do is go, well, how do I fall in love with the process? How do I start to enjoy the process? Well, I got to find maybe somebody, I got to find myself a Jashon who come to the gym with me because I'm really bad at getting up off my arse and going myself. Or someone who'll hold the weights, and spot me while I'm lifting the weights. And then you start to go, okay, well, maybe AI for me going back to education is the thing to do, is my spotter, is my, my cohort going, or my other person going to the gym with me. And when we put those steps in place, that North Star will take care of itself. So we don't need to actually even think about that. And maybe that North Star changes to a different North Star halfway through. And that's okay too.
How many times has our North Star moved?
So many bloody times. But that's good. Because I think what we've experienced in building FPK University is this started off as a little idea a long time ago. And then as we started to take those steps along the path, we started to realize the potential that was ahead of us. And we started to see the opportunities that it would open up ahead of us that would then allow us to kind of create something even bigger and better and more effective than we ever could have hoped for. So, and that might even still change, Jashon. like, like we keep adding things to the list of possibilities of things that we're looking to build. So But if we hadn't have taken those initial steps at the very start, this wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So it is just about going, do you know what? All I got to do is just take that first step. I just got to go. And maybe that first step is sitting down with an AI going, I would really love to learn algebra. And I'm a milkman. AI, tell me how I can integrate basic algebra into being a milkman. It's going to start you there, and that's where you go from, and just see where it takes you. Because
I mean,
that's where
just
confidence
like your
comes.
friend who's a contractor.
Hmm.
Yeah, just like your friend who was the contractor. I mean, he dropped out of school at 14 and he went into a great career for someone who dropped out. He went into the trades.
Hmm.
What better place to go to learn about fractions, addition?
Yeah.
You've got your tape measure. Everyone's got a tape measure. So, I mean, everything is a learning experience. Was it the best decision for him to drop out of school? For him, it absolutely was. There's no way to go back and say it wasn't. Um, the stuff you learn in life, you need to realize you're learning something. Every job, I don't care if you're in retail, if you're learning how to count, you're learning numbers. If you're folding clothes, you're learning, geometry. I need to pull this sleeve this
Yeah.
way, pull this sleeve that way. So everything you're doing is education. Just find what aspect of it you like, chunk it down into the most micro element you can that is most enjoyable and pertinent to you, and run with it.
Hmm.
And just run with it.
And that's where the beauty then lies. Because you might create something that is beautiful, not necessarily a picture, but maybe you become like a folder of clothes in a shop that really stands out, that sells loads more shirts in that shop because of the way you've designed the way it's going to look. Like it's just so the potential for all of us is there to maximize our sense of self-worth through action. And learning is learning, whether we get a certificate at the end or whether we just have more information from sitting in the bar with our friend that we didn't know before. It's all learning. And the more we continue to learn, the more we allow ourselves to learn, there are studies to show that the more brain activity we have, the better chance we have of getting into older age, and the better chance we have getting into older age, with a functioning brain. So, and if I was as old as you, Jashon, I'd definitely be thinking and worrying about that, Jashon, have you any final thoughts or comments that you want to make before we finish up today's podcast?
AI can be scary, that's for sure. But lack of knowledge and lack of education and direction is even scarier. So be truthful with yourself of your weaknesses. Use some AI to figure out how you can make those weaknesses into strength, and always look for the education in every process you do, whether shopping, conversations, sitting at the bar. Try to look for education in everything.
That's pretty good. I like that. All I'm going to say is, if you have any type of belief system that makes you question your ability or feel bad about yourselves, question that belief system. You probably took it on at a very impressionable age. You didn't know any different. You did the best that you could. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way life goes. But it doesn't need to be your reality moving forward. Everyone can change their belief system and take the negative elements, self-criticism, out and go, do you know what? Let's just give it a go. On that note, Jashon, we're going to say goodbye to the listeners. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week, same time, same place, for the Future Proof Knowledge Podcast, episode 12.
FPK, FPK, Future Proof Knowledge Podcast, mind unlocked. With every episode we cast, real talk, real tools, wisdom on the fly. Tune in, geek out, reach for the sky.